That was in March of 2014. This March will be 10 years. And in that 10 years, we grew this church from 16 people to, on average, about 140, 135, 140. There were many times in that 10 years that we bumped over 140. Well, certainly on one Sunday we'd bump over 140. But there were probably 3 or 4 other times where we were consistently bumping over that number, and truthfully, it gets to the place where people will turn. We watch them. People would watch families pull into our parking lot, not be able to find a parking place, turn around and leave. I heard about a family that actually walked into our building 2 weeks ago. Walked into our building, walked into the sanctuary, couldn't find a place to sit, and they left. We've been here before, and here's what I've come to realize. Now, this is hard in some ways for me to admit. I'm older now. I don't think I could have admitted this 5 years ago. I can admit it now. That's the best I can do. By myself, doing things the way that we have always done here, this is as good as it gets. I don't have the skill set, the time, the energy, the wherewithal to take us any further by myself. I have to reinvent the way that I pastor the church as a leader. It has nothing to do with preaching. It has nothing to do with the way I prepare for messages. It has nothing to do with Wednesday night. It has nothing to do with my own personal relationship with the Lord. It has a lot to do with myself as a professional pastor, as a shepherd of a flock. I have to reinvent how I'm going to do that in order for us to go further. And so there's a decision that gets to be made that says, okay, how about nothing changes? I don't change, you don't change, the church doesn't change, nothing changes. We just keep doing what we're doing. I want you to know I've considered this a lot. And I say, okay, maybe. This is pretty good. A lot of people getting baptized, a lot of good stories. Families have been healed. This is pretty good. We could do this. Maybe I don't change. And then the Lord punched me right in the face with this thought. The Lord punched me in the face and He says, take a look at your current leadership. The people around you. Take a look at the people who have primarily took you from 16 people to 140 people. Look at those families. And then now project not 10 years into the future, project 5 years into the future. How old are those people going to be? Well, Rex just retired last year. He's one of them. There's other families. I'm telling you, practically to a family, 5 years from now, they are 70 years old or older. And the Lord said, okay, now go 5 more years. If you're going to do 10 more years and you're not going to change, big fella, what's going to happen? You know what would happen? We'll get all the way back down to 16 people. And the Lord said, what are you going to do? And I was wrestling the Lord, and I get a phone call out of the blue from my friend Tim McGuire. And it says, hey, have you been thinking about doing something different? Have you been thinking about growing? Have you been thinking about what it would look like to bring somebody else on staff with you? And we started a conversation. And that conversation continued for about 2 months. And I included the church board on that conversation. And I want you to know this. I include the church board in almost everything, unfairly to the church board. It's going to be one of the things that probably will have to change at some point as I change. The church board has had to go through my crazy brain every single step of the way for 10 years. Every thought that I have even before it's ready to be presented to the church board, they've had to follow me on this roller coaster. And they did this time. And we talked about Tim McGuire. And our first thought on Tim McGuire was this. For those of us who know him, how many people know Tim? Raise your hand. How many don't? How many have never been around him? Tim, for those of you who know Tim McGuire, you know him as what? What was his role in church? He's a worship leader. That's what he does. He's a guitar player. He's a worship leader. He's produced music. They've made CDs. They've sold, I think he told me 65,000 songs on Spotify. He's a worship leader, and that was my first thought. Was that, wow? Tim's got he's got so much skills and ability in this area that I think he'll be able to help us and help us grow in all different kind of ways. And I started to talk to the church board in that way about Tim as a worship leader. And our thoughts immediately went to Dave and our current band, and we considered all of that and talked to that. Dave, and just so you know, Dave's sitting right here. Dave and I talk every week, multiple times a week. For the last 8 years, Dave has been involved, and I said this morning, and it's true. In almost every single decision I've made, Dave has been involved. Some of those decisions Dave didn't agree with me, and some that he did, but some that he didn't. Dave has been a real confidant of mine. He's been an advisor of mine. He's been a partner in ministry. And I have thought, every time I think about Tim McGuire, I think about Dave Pratt. And have from the beginning. It's not new. And I've talked to Dave about it. And our first thought was to bring Tim in as in some ways, associate pastor in my head was always the title. But the very first revolution of this was Tim McGuire, associate pastor, worship director. And that's the way that we went about it. And truthfully, as it simmered, think about simmer on the stove. Just simmered for a couple of weeks after that, and continued to simmer, and it started to bubble up, and things started to heat up in a good way, and possibilities started to come, and things started to form, and I started to get some clarity. And in many hours of prayer and getting along with the Lord, I started to come to this realization that there's two ways of going about this. One way of going about this is this either-or mindset, this real box mindset that says, here's Dave Pratt, and here's Dave's box, and here's Tim, and here's Tim's box. And the only way for this to work is Dave Pratt, we're going to have to take Dave Pratt and his box, and we're going to have to move it aside. I hope Dave stays here with us, but we're going to have to move Dave's Pratt box out of his way, and then we're going to bring Tim in, and then we're going to all try to get along together. And it was like either or. As I continued to pray and wrestle with this, the Lord said, why are you thinking either or? Don't you know that the Lord said, listen, I'm a God of multiplication. I'm not a God of, first of all, I'm not a God that, is like, hey, don't ever change anything. Just keep doing the things that you did, for the last 10 years. He said, but I'm a God of multiplication. And he says, how about we stop thinking about like 1 minus 1 equals the 1, He says, how about instead we start thinking about what would happen if we started thinking about multiplication? What if we thought about Tim McGuire and Dave Pratt? And then the Lord said, wait a minute, check this out. What about if we think about Tim McGuire and Sharon McGuire and Dave Pratt and Deb Pratt and Kathy Jones and Scott Jones and everybody else who wants to be involved, and we start doing some multiplication factors on that, watch what can happen. Instead of thinking about replacing somebody one for one, how about we start getting people together and we start thinking about what would it look like to multiply. I want to take a pause. Does that make sense? Do you guys have any questions on how we've got to where we are in this point? It's a long history. It goes all the way back, to me playing basketball and softball. That was before I have a metal hip myself. No, I can't. The doctor won't let me play basketball and softball anymore. So that's a long way. But if you don't understand that, if you don't understand kind of how we got here and what the trajectory is and what our ceiling has been, then us bringing another full-time pastor on staff won't make any sense. But I'm hoping that once you understand that there was a ceiling, then you say, okay, wait a minute. If we're going to continue to have an influence in this community, we're going to have to become something different than we were. Something more is probably a better word. Something more than we are. And our pastor, Scott Jones, is going to have to become something more than he was. And that, for the first time in my ministry now, I am senior pastor. I've learned how to be pastor. I've learned how to do that. I don't know yet what it's like to be senior pastor. Because Tim McGuire is also a fully ordained pastor in the Church of the Nazarene. His Nazarene roots go deep. His father was a district superintendent. He's got grandfathers that were deeply involved in the Church of the Nazarene. He's deeply invested in the Church of the Nazarene. I'm a senior pastor. And so I've got to figure out now, what does that look like, and how do we leverage that, and how do we multiply his ability and my ability and Dave's ability and our spouse's ability and all of the people that are enthusiastic about getting involved? How do we multiply that? And Lord, what do you want to do? And I'm telling you, it gets to be exciting and scary and overwhelming all at the same time. And part of me, my kids get so angry when I say this, but part of me says, man, I'm 55 years old. I'm too old to learn all this new stuff. And then I'm reminded that Moses was 80. So any questions on how we got to where we are? So now, moving forward, both Tim, Dave, their spouses, me, my spouse, this is the idea. I started to really, and this is where there's a real benefit of this. I have truly known Tim McGuire for over 25 years. We've been friends. We've been co-laborers in the Lord. We're pastors. We've seen each other be ordained. We've done some really, really cool ministry stuff together. And then I realized in hours of conversation with Tim over literally 2 months, and I thought back on it, I think it was God shaking my memory. As I thought back on it, Tim and I never talked about music. I never talked to him about his guitar. I never asked him what kind of songs he was going to play. We never talked about it. I didn't. It was a non-issue. I'm not concerned about what that looks like. What I did talk to Tim a lot about is the fact that he has an intrinsic drive to get involved with the community. He's an outreach-focused guy. People by and large gravitate towards Tim. He's likable. He's unique. He's creative. I promise you, you're going to have 15-minute conversations with Tim, and you're going to walk away and you're going to say, I have no idea what that man just said. You're going to say, really, I don't know what he said. And then about a week later, you're going to say, wait a minute, that was brilliant. What that dude said was brilliant. And then other times you're going to say, I don't think I know what he said. But as I thought about all of that, and I start to think about, wait a minute, Tim and I will have to spend no time ramping up, getting together. He knows me, I know him. I know his bad parts, he knows my bad parts, I know his good parts, he knows my good parts. We're going to be able to hit the ground running, and we will. And so what does it look like? So what does it look like up here? So what's it going to look like when Tim gets here? Tim's last Sunday in his church is next Sunday. Tim will arrive here sometime the following week. Tim may be here as soon as August 13th. They've got their house sold. If everything goes through, they have a house purchased here. If everything goes through, I'm very happy about this. We'll see. It maybe a little premature, but Tim and Sharon have chosen to buy a house in a really um, I would call fruitful area for who we are as a church. They bought a house on the west side of Lake Station, just outside of Gary, just off of Central Avenue. It's the Lord has been. I've shared this with Kathy for a long time, 5 years at least. I've always thought that the Lord may have a ministry for us in Lake Station. This church was in Lake Station before it came to South Haven. I thought, wonder if we can redeem that. I wonder if somehow, maybe some way, there's a campus for us somehow in Lake Station. And sure enough, Tim and Sharon had bought a place in on the west side of Lake Station, just outside of Gary. Interesting stuff. And so, what is it going to look like? I will, without shame, say this to you. I'm not sure. I don't know yet. I believe Dave Pratt and Tim McGuire are going to get along smashingly. I think they are going to love each other. I think they're going to benefit from each other. I think they're going to learn from each other. I think they're going to mesh, and they're going to figure it out. They're two grown men. These guys are grown, mature, stable, solid men, and they're going to figure it out. And they're going to figure it out better than me sitting back in my little office over there and telling them, you do this and you do that. How about instead of that, we come together and we start to figure it out. And we say, you know what? Over the course of time, it's going to make sense how this is going to look. And what do we do for our current band? You see, we have this band that's been here for a year. It was a little different a year ago. We had a little bit of a pause and a shift. But our current band now has reformed. What am I going to do? Tell them, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, in and out? No, I'm not doing that. And I don't think anyone in our current band needs to fear that. I think what we all have to do in every corner of our church is we have to come together and we say, wait a minute. For all of this comes back into this message this morning. Some of it was very intentional, my timing of the messages. For every one of you who are currently involved in leadership, I want you to think about that farmer story that Jesus told. In that farmer story that Jesus told, in one version it was 7 times, in another version it was 9 times. In just a couple of verses, the farmer said, me, my, and I. It's about me, it's about me, it's about me, it's about my barn. This is my barn. Don't touch my barn. This is my barn. There was no God in it. It was my barn. My place, my stuff, my barn. I earned it. It's mine. Don't mess with it. I wonder if somehow, some way, each and every person currently involved in ministry here can take a look at that and say, you know what, Lord? It's your barn. It's your stuff. It's your gifts. It's yours. And I hand it back over to you and say, oh, Lord, show me. How now do I get involved? And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody in this church has to do that more than me. Nobody. I've been Scott Flippin Jones, pastor of this place, the only pastor of this place, the only guy on staff. I've had a wonderful working relationship with my church board. You know what I have to do? I have to take all that and put it on the table and say, God, for 10 years, this is how I've done it. And you know what, Lord? It's all yours. And I give it all up to you. I've had to talk with my wife about this. So, hon, are we willing to put it all on the table? What if it doesn't work out? What if I have to change more than I thought? What happens if it outgrows me and they're going to bring in some superstar pastor and I get, have to go do something else? It's all okay. It's all okay. Scott and Kathy Jones are going to be okay. We're following the Lord. The Lord has us. We trust the Lord. And so that gets us to right now. So what happens? What happens when Tim comes and Dave and Deb come back from sabbatical? Well, I'm going to be very, very intentional about getting Dave, Tim, and myself together. You know what we're going to do first? Not just once. Probably at Taco Bell will be part of it. It's a Tim McGuire thing for those of you who don't know. It's gross. Taco Bell's gross, but man, big on Taco Bell. We're going to pray. And we're going to pray some more. We're going to pray. And we're going to keep praying. We're going to keep praying until we hear the Lord, until we see the Lord, until the Lord is in us and with us and through us, and we're going to pray until we can trust one another, and we're going to pray. And we're going to talk about church, and we're going to talk about this community, and we're going to talk about the needs of this community, and we're going to pull from each other the best that the Lord has put in us. And we're not going to worry about who's boss of who. I want to say that again. We're not going to worry about who's boss of who. We're going to put it on the Lord, and we're going to say, Jesus is our boss. How then do we do this? And I want you to know, I'll say it out loud. Hey, ultimately, President so-and-so said, the buck stops here. Ultimately, if there's a tough decision that has to be made, it's going to be me that has to make it. And ultimately, if there's a tough decision that has to be made and there's going to be a price to be paid for it, it's going to be me that has to pay for it. I understand. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be disagreed with when I make a decision. I got it. Sometimes that disagreement can last for a year or more. I know. I get it. It's okay. It really is okay. But that's how this thing is going to roll. So, Kath, would you hand those out? I'll take them. Thank you. Don, would you pass those out, please? Thank you. You may have to take like one per family. Rex, we're over 30 minutes, aren't we? That's because we prayed about Jamie. I wasn't expecting that. That's stinking Jamie. Stinking Jamie. So here's what else I wanted. While we're passing these out, though, are there any questions? It's okay to ask questions. Any questions? Anything that I muddied up there? Anything that I can clarify? Anything that doesn't make sense? I'm listening. Hold on now, we got a comment. No. If we could share way more people than, that's true. Way more people showed up than I was anticipating. Anybody not have access to a copy? Billy? Yeah, here you go, Bill. Rex doing the barn thing and giving up his space. That's right. Patty, you had a comment. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, sir. It's a hey hey the new church is an interesting conversation. It will come up again, and as I said, we're going to have a series of these. It will come up. In fact, I wanted to use this chalkboard for anything that would come up that we would need to circle back to a new building. I will tell you this: we did spend some money last year, and with an architect, and we did get some plans that are drawn up for the addition of a sanctuary here. So we do have some plans. We've taken one step towards that, but we'll let that park into another meeting. Okay. A second service. Now that's something, Donna, that I think that we can talk about right now, but I don't know if we'll get it completely settled in here. So let me write this down. Second service. On the papers that I handed out to you, there is a timeline. I wish I would have. I wish I was. I should have done this. I wish you would do this, especially on the calendar pages. I wish you would take your pencil or pen and write the word draft right through the middle of it. Draft. This isn't etched in stone, okay? This is a pretty good working draft. I'm not promising that all of these things are going to happen exactly the way it's laid out there. I can speak pretty confidently that the preaching schedule. Now that's we're pretty close on that. Okay, that's kind of the direction that we're going to be heading. But on the calendars, there is some working idea here. So let me just go through this real quick, and then we'll put a wrap on it. Okay, then you can take this home, and we'll pick up from here in our next meeting. When you come into the room next Sunday, things are going to look different. The cross is going to be going to the back wall. We've got a big screen that comes up here, and we're going to use that big screen maybe just for a graphic, maybe for some other things, but we're going to shift some things. There's going to be some banners on the wall, and there's going to be some signage in the lobby, and the signage in the lobby says, danger. It's kind of cool, like warning. Warning, dangerous prayers in this room. There's going to be a sign out there. There's going to be signs on the walls that says dangerous prayers. Search me. That's going to be on August 6th. And then it's going to be break me. That's going to be on August 13th. And it's going to be send me. That's going to be on August 20th. And then we're going to have a baptism service in here on the 27th. We already have several people who are interested in baptism, some babies, some adults. It's very exciting already, kind of the energy behind the baptism service. So that's going to be the dangerous prayers. What's also going to be happening in August is we're going to start surveying our congregation and start to get an idea of how people would feel about two services, what times those two services would be, what would happen with children's ministry. There's some parts of two services that really require people to step up, because we have to double almost everything that we do for one service, for two services in terms of children's ministry and Rusty Cup and the lobby and all of those kind of things. So there's a lot to that. We can't just snap our fingers and go to two services. I really want us to think about that and do that right. Now here's something else though that we're really going to start talking about in August, September, and October. And that is really going to be getting people involved in midweek services. If it's Wednesday, fantastic. If it's Thursday with Tim and Barbara, fantastic. If it's another night of the week, maybe Friday night Reno Jams, maybe some other classes that we get started, fantastic. But we want people to be getting involved midweek activities, because we feel like Sunday morning is fantastic for what it does. But there is another need that we have to connect with people, to be able to experience the Scriptures in a way that we can talk, we can ask questions, we can be vulnerable with one another. If you haven't been to Wednesday night or Thursday night here, you really should check out what's going on. Now, Tim and Barbara, on a regular basis, Tim, I don't know how many years you guys have been using August as an abide, step away, rest time. A number of years, I'm assuming. 10 years, ever since you guys have been here, I know that August is a downtime for relationships matter. It's great for us because we're going to be filling some of that time up with some meetings on Thursday nights while you guys are away, and then in September you come back and Thursday night you're ready to roll again. And then September, I want you to be thinking about this as well. September 3rd is we've done it many times. Most years, we have a picnic on Labor Day Sunday. And we're going to have a picnic again this Labor Day Sunday. It won't be just like, hey, we have church and then we're going to do some food after church. We won't have a typical Sunday morning church service. The church service will be the picnic. The idea is that the family of God getting together and spending time getting together. We'll have bounce houses for the kids. There'll be a concert out there. We'll have a trailer with a concert. And it also is going to be the time that we really kind of let the world know that Tim and Sharon McGuire are here. We'll go through a whole promotional campaign with that into the neighborhood through Facebook, some online stuff. And so I'm hoping that on that September 3rd Sunday, it's a very exciting time. Coming out of that, we're going to spend the 3 weeks in a Gear Up series where I will be talking about the values of our church, especially for all of the new people who the Lord has been bringing here. I want to talk about who we are, and we could best be defined by follow Jesus, work together, make a difference for good. That'd be the three sermons in September, and the Wednesday classes will follow with that. And then in October would be the time that if things roll out the way that I'm hoping, and our attendance energy continues to move in the direction it does, and as we survey, as we connect with our current congregation, that maybe as soon as October, again, write draft on it, but maybe as soon as October, we would be 2 services. The times listed on there is at 8:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. That's not etched in stone. It's an idea. It's a possibility. 8:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. Okay? So that's the presentation. That gets out of my head and heart through the church board, and I have already talked about this, two different meetings and lots of other conversations. So this is old information to the church board, but I did want to get it out into the public airwaves as well. Okay? Questions? Comments? Yes? Yes? No, ma'am. No. No. All of those sermons are my ideas. Now, there's I especially this one coming up, this dangerous prayers one. Now that's a series that was done by a pastor named Greg Rochelle, Life Church out in Oklahoma. They're a massive church, 50,000 people. They do what I love about them is they don't charge churches to have their graphic packages and stuff, and so we get to use some of that. Now the sermon will be my own, but the title, Dangerous Prayers, and there's this image of, you guys may have seen it on the magnet, the refrigerator magnets that we handed out. That was from that church, graciously offered to us. But the sermons themselves, I want you to know, Lena Marie, is that those are from me and the Lord. Okay? Yeah. Yep. And so what we started in 2023 was in the season of Advent. We followed that all the way to Pentecost. I do intend to do that again. But even those are a series of Bible verses in which I use to create the messages. Yes, Emily. Correct. Yeah. I'm hoping to do that all the way through October. That for the most part, the Wednesday class will build on that previous Sunday's message. Okay? Yes. It's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Paula asked if I anticipate people following Tim McGuire here. I've had many conversations now with Pastor Rich Doring, who's currently the pastor at Real Life Community Church, knowing full well that when Tim was here for 20 some years. Tim had quite a following. As I said, when Tim and I were doing our thing there with the rest of our staff, it wasn't just Tim and I. And I got to really be careful with that because it wasn't just Tim and I. There was an entire staff. Dwayne Schmidt was still, even though he wasn't the pastor, he was influential. There was a whole community of leaders there. I got to be the preacher. Tim got to be the worship leader. But when we grew that, we meaning all of us, when we grew that church to over 1,000 people. Right now, currently, Real Life has somewhere probably about 425 or so. So my hope is that for some of those 600 people that were part of a church, then they went away and they're not currently part of a church, I would love for some of those people to get off their couch and to get over here into a chair. I would love that. What I don't want to see happen is somebody that's currently sitting in a chair over there to leave that chair and come over here. I don't want to see that happen. I would love for people sitting on a couch and apart from church to come here. Yep. 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 I would. Let me respond real quick. Yep. Yep. I will say this. Pastor Rich Doring and I are developing a wonderful relationship. I respect him. I admire him. He is he's a motivator to me. He's encouraging to me. I can learn some things from him. I really enjoy my time with him. And I am quite certain that as the dust settles on all of this, Pastor Rich and I will be I think the Holy Spirit is quite capable of talking to us as well. And if the Holy Spirit is saying to somebody, "Hey, I want you to leave this church and go to that church," then he'll be talking with us about that as well. And um, if that is healthy and good, then what's healthy and good is healthy and good. Ugly and nasty, we'll have to just kind of take it slow. Yes, Donna. Yep. Yes. Well, I tell you what, Donna, I think that's really brilliant. You're absolutely right. We call our membership class here about. Um, kind of like you see websites and like, hey, what's this about? That's our membership class, and it is time to get them on the calendar. Thank you for bringing it up. It's on another document that I have that I'll have for our next meeting, but it is time to get them on the calendar. Thank you, Bill. Then Kelly. Yes. Yep. It may be a different evening. It may not. I'm open to a lot of things, Bill. I'm even open to the thought of a church service that would be like a Sunday church service that would be a different evening. And I'm open to Sunday evening. It's truly not my preference, but I will say this to you. I will say this that when I said earlier that I'm holding on to this like this, Lord, I'm holding on to it like this. Donna. Yep. Yep. I am completely open to the conversation. Yes. Yep. I'm open. I'm open to the conversation. I don't know exactly how it will come out, but I am open to the conversation. Oh yeah, Dave. Hey, if we do a Sunday night service, Dave's preaching. That's- yeah, yeah, no. Hey, Tim, I'll get him. I'll get him. I will tell you this: we have learned something over the years. Baptizing people and then throwing them to the wolves of the world without a solid support system will not happen again here. We seen them beaten when the last people that were baptized here, 10 or 12 people, man, they got beaten, and we're going to be doing the best we can to protect that. Kelly, then Wayne. Yeah, I think there's a really you mentioned this. It's really on my heart. Kathy and I talk about it quite a bit. Is part of that baptism process is being assigned to a mentor. And if it's a couple, then a couple. If it's male, it's male. If it's female, it's female. But really having somebody to walk with them and to protect them. Thank you, Wayne. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, yes. Yeah, yep. Yes, yes. I think it really. I tell you, it, yeah. Thank you, Wayne. Yep. Yes, and we could talk about that offline a little bit, but I'll work with you on that of kind of where we are on that. I will tell you this just to relieve any anxiety you have. Yes, here's the where the anxiety relief will come for you is that as a denomination, Wesleyan in theology, um, we believe that each person has to make a decision on their own to come to Jesus. You can't decide for somebody that they're going to follow Jesus. They have to make their own declaration of salvation. Yes, next. Yep, 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 yep. For we ride, as far as motorcycles go, as far as I'm concerned, the whole week is open. We don't need any space for that ministry. But if you turn to September and October, my hope is, again, write the word draft. We're having a meeting this Thursday with children's and teens leaders. I'm hoping that Tuesday nights in the barn becomes Teens Tuesdays. It may not. It may be Sunday night teens. I don't know. It may be Monday night teens. I don't know. But I do think that one of our nights here we have to have a teen ministry. It has been lacking in our church, and we need to have teen ministry involved. Whether that's Tuesday night or not, I'm not sure. But we do. Our current scenario is, and Dave and Tim may decide to change it. I don't know, but our current situation is that Tuesday nights are our band practices in this room, usually about 6:30 or so onward until sometimes late at night. So, but yeah, all good. I think that's probably the place to be looking. We'll know more Thursday when we talk about things on Thursday, because it may be Monday. Correct. That's correct. Then it wouldn't be a conflict. So it's something that I want to talk about on Thursday. So you know what? None right now. Zero. We don't have a teen ministry. Um, we have, but as far as a teen ministry goes, it has been a hole in our church ministry for 10 years. I'm looking forward to knowing how many teams we have. I don't know. I'm looking forward to. Here's what I do know: Portage High School has about 600 of them. I know that. Now, how many we currently have in our represented by our families here? I don't know that answer, but I do know that we don't have a current teen ministry, and that's that it is. And we can name all these kids. We can name Blake. We can name all these kids. We do not have a teen ministry right now. Those kids. So let's think about it. Let's think about Sophia. How old is Sophia? 13 years old. Sophia, in her typical Sunday morning experience, Sophia has been she's a 13-year-old girl. She's been in classes with children as young as third grade. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. And we must fix it. I'm insisting that we fix it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Correct. Kim and J.D. Chale said this to Kathy and I, and they would stick by it, and they meant it. They said, "We don't count kids; we make kids count." And I'm telling you, there is something to that. We don't count kids; we make kids count. And they would say it, and they meant it every time. I said, "They said we don't care if we have one kid that day. That kid is going to get a double dose of us, and they are going to have Jesus all over them by the time they leave here." Felicia. Yeah. Yeah. That's correct. We have to fix that problem. It is, and again, it's on me. It's a problem that must be fixed, and I will add it to our board. But listen, I told you guys we were going to be in here for 30 minutes. This is the best 30 minutes you've ever had in your life. But is um all good?